Greetings, boys and girls, guys and gals, ladies and gentlemen, sirs, threats. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be doing something a little bit different than I normally do. I'll be showcasing a game that is called Abandoned Mechs. I've been developing this game actually for about 6 years now, and I'm glad to show it off to the world now. This is a miniature slash card strategy game where you'll use these cards right here to design your mechs loadout and use these miniatures here to represent your mechs in this battlefield right here. Now, one thing I do need to let you guys know, I did not design any of these miniatures. These miniatures are, you could say taken, but I would say provided by a content creator. There will be a link in the description to where you can view the Steam Workshop page where I borrowed these miniatures from. If you have any questions about the game, I'll explain them at the end here soon. Anywho, this game is a pretty fun one and a pretty interesting one that I've worked with. I've only done a quote-unquote test with a friend of mine once, so I'm desperate for feedback about how to actually play this game. So I will start this now, and this is the rulebook. I'll be kind of reading this to you guys. If you guys want to pause the video on certain pages, you can simply just pause it at the moment, or just read it while I'm explaining it in the background. So first page here, that is, well, technically not the first page, but this is the table of contents. The table of contents has all the stuff that we'll be covering today, which is mech component parts, mech construction, mech combat, game modes, and extra information. I'll be covering the extra information first before the game modes. The game modes are important, but not as important as the extra information. However, the extra information is behind the game modes because the extra information only applies to a handful of cards, and these cards are special in their own way. I can't really explain too much, and I don't want to spoil too much of the cards because I want you guys to explore the game and give me feedback about it. And obviously you guys can give me feedback by commenting on the video, sending the messages personally to me, or you guys can comment on the Steam Workshop page. If this does blow up, I'll have some tournaments going on for card creation and all that other fun stuff. So we're going to talk about components, parts. There are 7 component parts. There's core, legs, weapons, defense abilities, tactical abilities, offense abilities, and modules. We're going to talk about these 3 first. These 3 are the primary ones, and you always get one of. Now, let's go ahead and get this demo, or this rule explaining started. By the way, if you want to pause the video, go ahead and pause it now to read these rules. For the core is the primary thing that you need for your mech design. You only get 1 core per mech, and it is essential. It is essentially what gives you the energy for your turn to do your actions. It also has some cores may have module slots that you can use to change your playstyle. I'll explain modules at the end of the component parts. So I'm reading these in session. So, another thing is the core makes up essentially half of your whole hit points. I'll explain a little bit more about whole points once I get done explaining legs. So that's what the core is. It is the thing that generates your energy for your mech, and it is essentially the chassis of your mech. It also provides module slots for you to customize your loadouts. Certain cores may not have module slots, but those are like low tier. Mid and high are where your module slots would be provided. Now the legs will be your main source of propulsion, moving across the board and setting up your playstyle. Your mech, um, however, does not rely 100% on your legs for mobility, as in there are some components in the ability categories that can add to your movement. As for example, thrusters, hover boots, well, not really hover boots, but hover mode, and a bunch of other stuff. However, though, this is the second half of what makes up your mech's hull points. So the combining your cores and your legs hull points together to make your mech's hull points. For example, if my core has 40 points and my legs have 20, I'll combine those two numbers together to make 60. You're literally adding your legs and your components hit points together to make the sum of your mech's hit points. Now let's talk about the next component, which is weapons. Weapons are the primary damage system and which are used to make your mech deadly. You only get one per mech. However, though, there are some components that you can use that adds components or adds more weapons to your mech's loadout. So that is also really important to keep in mind for when you design your mech. Defense abilities are pretty much what it is. It's an ability that you'll use for your defense and protect yourself from any form of damage that would be coming your way, or preparing yourself for future attempts of taking damage. You only get one per mech design. However, though, there are components that will make up for additional or loss of components or defense abilities. Wow. The next ability that we'll be covering here is tactical abilities. Tactical abilities is pretty much a jack of all trades. It is what you'll use to polish off your playstyle. If you need a bit more, you need ability that can play in both roles, that's tacticals. Tactical abilities is a really important ability in my opinion. It's what makes a build a build. But just like the defense abilities, you only get one. However, though, if you have some different components installed in your mech, you may gain or lose defense or tactical abilities. Offense abilities. The offense abilities is your damage ability. These will come in different system or different styles of damage, either just really making your enemy difficult to do stuff in an offensive manner, like removing their shields entirely, or just stunning them. There are different types of abilities than just damage for the offense ability. But just like the previous abilities, there are components that you can add to it that will gain or lose the offense abilities. Now, modules. This is the thing that makes it a bit more complex. When you install these into your mech, depending on the module slots that your core provides, you can change your playstyle. And the majority of the modules are a trade-off. For example, you can see right down there that you gain a defense ability, but you lose a tactical ability. So instead of having a defense, a tactical, and an offense, you have two defense and an offense. Just in case if you're concerned about taking more damage than you already idealized to happen. So it's an interesting game, but a game that requires a lot of strategizing, focus, and construction. But hey, that's a fun game in my mind. Now we're going to start talking about mech construction, and then we'll carry on to mech combat after we talk about construction. Construction is simple for me to explain rules, but it's complex in practice. It is difficult in practice, but simple on paper. So on paper, you'll just get one core, one pair of legs, a weapon, defense, tactical, and offense ability to make the basics of your chassis. Now, if your core allows module slots, we'll talk about the module part. The modules is where you will install based off of the module slots of your core, and this allows you to change your abilities around either by granting you more abilities in a certain field or granting you an additional weapon for your mech to hold. And yes, dual wielding is a component for the modules, and it is fun to use, trust me. One hand you have a minigun and the other hand you have a sniper rifle. It is awesome. I've done it before. Wow, it is fun. Now let's talk about mech combat. Now, starting of the game, you'll lay out 7 tiles just like this, and when you lay out the 7 tiles just like that, each player will find a mech figure they want and then put it 1 tile away from the ends. These are the end tiles, and the mechs, say you grab this one, you'll put it here, and he will grab this one, and he'll put his here. This is what the start of the game should look like. And it explains it a bit more right here, where the first player will place their mech on the second tile, and the second player will place their mech on the 6th tile, reading left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, the way how the game starts, if you guys cannot decide who goes first, there is no official rule in the rule book that tells you who goes first. So you guys will have to decide who goes first, either by accepting going first or doing a game of rock, paper, scissors, or even flipping a coin. It's a very simple process, but one that needs to be done. Now, there is a starting advantage. Everyone believes that there's some form of starting advantage, so this rule I've implemented here. The person who goes first gets to only have a single point of energy to spend at their turn. This prevents the player from having the first turn benefit, and most of the time people will go with a defensive ability or an offensive ability. But there might be a random Jill out there that might use a tactical ability. So that's the start of the game. Now, in the game, there will be something known as ability cooldowns. This makes the game actually fun. I've played it without ability cooldowns, and it is pure mayhem. The game is over within at most 5 turns. It's insane. Essentially what happens is whoever can do the most damage in 1 turn wins the game. Anywho, abilities cooldowns can be tracked by counters, which are found in the orange bag here. And the counters are very important for not only ability cooldowns, but also keeping track of some other stuff that I'll be talking about after I get done talking about the playing the game. So the next thing that we'll talk about is damage, repairs, and shielding. Now, the way how damage is dealt in this game is by the powers of 5, 5, 10, 15, and so on and so on. If you have to split a damage in half because of a component that tells you, hey, you don't do this amount of damage to this part of the mech because it's, there's some form of resistance. Then yes, there are some resistance to certain weapons. For example, there is a core that's called the fridge, and it has cooling gel that allows you to take half the damage from thermal based weaponry. It's really cool, and it's only effective against thermal based weaponry. So like fire stuff. So you only take half the damage. You will round up to the nearest multiplier of 5. For example, you're doing 40 or 45 damage to an opponent. Half of 45 is 22.5. You will round it up to the nearest multiplier of 5, which is 25 damage. Yes, you are technically taking more than half the damage. However, though, this is applied to everyone, regardless of what it is. Now, repairs is the next part that we're going to talk about, and it is really simple. You cannot repair past your maximum health, but you can repair hull damage if you have an ability for it. And your maximum health will be the combination of your core and legs hit points added up together. Now, shielding is the last thing that we're going to talk about in this category, and shielding is really simple. There's no limit barrier. You just keep going up in your shield count. It's incredible, it's awesome, and I personally like that type of system because, well, almost every turn you're going to take damage, and if you don't take damage, it's because you've been dealing damage to your opponent, and he's backpedaling and trying to make sure he doesn't lose, or she, or they, whatever they are. Anything. The last thing for the mech combats is movement. Movement is the same direction and same movement in both directions. So if you go 2 tiles forwards, you can go also 2 tiles backwards. There is no movement penalty for going backwards or anything like that. And I do apologize for the bikers in the background. You guys do hear them. I live in a biker popular area. Like there's 4 or 5 neighbors I have that have like Harleys and they're loud. Yeah, America. Anywho, now if you have a mech that has hover and you wish to move, they move normally as if they were on the ground. So you have to tell players, or you have to confirm, hey, my mech is hovering. And that allows you to avoid fire tiles and any type of landmine. So you have to confirm that your mech is hovering. So for example, you have an ability that allows your mech to hover. You just say, hey, I'm using this ability to hover and I'm moving this main tiles over the landmines. Okay, cool. You avoid the landmines. Bravo. So that's awesome. Trust me, it is. Now, next thing we're going to talk about is not the game modes, but etcher information. Now, with the hover part, I did talk about flaming tiles and landmines. This right here are the etcher rule tiles about fire tiles and landmines. So, the field tiles is what makes up the battlefield, and you have to set them in 7 on a straight line and make sure that the free tile is facing up, which is the black side, as you can see right here. Now, if a tile gets caught on fire, you will flip it over to a fire tile. That means this tile is on fire. However, though, since the tile is on fire, you will have to place a timer or counter right here and representing how long the fire is. The fire will last this many turns, and the way how the turn system works is it goes off of your turn. So whenever it comes to your turn, any timers or counters that you set up, you have to click to deactivate them whenever it's your turn. So if 2 people are having fire tiles set up in 2 different systems, this player, for example, sets this tile on fire, and this player here sets this tile on fire. Whenever it's his turn, he does not affect both tiles, he only affects this tile, if that makes sense. So, encounters are a very important thing. I forgot to mention about how the counters work, so this is me cleaning up the rules that I forgot to mention. Now, landmines. Landmines come in different shapes and forms. A tile can have up to 5 landmines within that tile. You can have any different types of landmines. Now, there are different types of landmines. We got harpoon mines and we got landmines. A tile can have up to 5 different types of landmines, or up to 5 different types of mines. So right here is a great example. There's a harpoon mine in here and 4 landmines. Or there can be 2 harpoon mines and 3 landmines. That's how that works. And yeah, there's someone over there. And there's a bunch of people driving around today. That's fun. Anywho, but yeah, that's the landmine system works. Each landmine has 5 points of damage, or has 5 hit points. So if you do 25 damage, you can clear out a full tile of landmines. But if you don't do 25 damage, and let's say you do 15, and this whole tile is cluttered of landmines of different types, you will have to remove the landmines that you are destroying, essentially. And then whatever landmines are left over are the landmines that are in play. Fire does have a lifespan, and it will tell you on the weapon itself or whatever module you're using about how long the fire lasts. However, the landmines do not have a lifespan. They will go on infinitely throughout the game, and landmines are neutral targets. So if you place them and you walk into them, they will hurt you. So you gotta be careful when using landmines, particularly the landmines. If you use harpoon mines, I'm sure they're not. It will say in the card if they're neutral or if they're not, but the majority of the time they're neutral, and so that means you gotta watch out what you're doing too when you're using them. Now let's go ahead and talk about the game modes. There are 3 game modes. There's 2 that are kind of like just fun games for you to play around with. But there is an official game mode, which is Parts War. I'm going to talk about these 2 components right here, the Quick Skirmish and the Standard Skirmish. And once I get done talking about those, then I'll explain what the Parts War is. And this one I'm actually really fond of. Now, a Quick Skirmish is one of the 3 official game modes for Abandoned Mechs. The way how a Quick Skirmish is that both players will search these decks and they will choose, hey, I like this card. I'm using this card. Cool. You get to design your mech based off of knowing every card in the game. Now, the way how the standard skirmish work is similar to this, but instead of choosing any card, the deck will be shuffled. This is all the deck, or the entire core. This is the entire deck of all these cards into one big stack. You will shuffle this deck and then split it in half. For example, with the current deck, you'll get 48 cards. Within Tabletop, there's a way that you can split the deck in half. You literally just right click it and you go to spread, or not spread. I did not mean spread. Alright, let's rewind that. I did not mean to spread that. I meant to say split into 2. And so there will be 2 decks. This deck and this deck. And then you'll just take half, and that will be you'll put that in your hand, and then those will be the cards you'll use to design your mech. Now here comes the fun part, the Parts War. Parts War is a very interesting deck. You'll shuffle the component deck, and then each player will draw 2 cards, and then give 1 card to the opponent that they do not want. And essentially, it's like a draft. So for example, I'm fighting someone. I'll draw 2 cards, and I'll flip them both. I will then choose which card I want. And say, for example, I want Hate's Tactics, and I don't want this. Here, Tom, you can have this. All right, cool. Then he will draw 2 cards, and then he'll do the same thing. This will go back and forth until the entire deck is empty. It's depleted. There's no more cards to draw. And then once that is done, you'll treat it like a skirmish. You'll design your mech, and you go to battle. Now, at the end of the battle, the winner gets to take all the cards that were used for the mech's loadouts, and they will take them and add them to their deck that they have, and then you guys will then design your own mech again, and this will keep going on until one player cannot design a mech. Once a mech cannot be designed, the player that has the most cards wins. So essentially what happens is that me and Tom go back and forth, and I'm using Tom as an example of a name. We'll go back and forth, duking it out, and Tom can no longer build a mech. I have 94 cards, and he only has 2 cards. I would win, and he would lose. That would take a very long time, obviously, but there are so many different combinations and mech designs with this game that it's going to be fun regardless, and it allows you to put your mind to the test of designing mechs. And it helps you make up ideas for what you will do for designs. Anyways, we're gonna go here to the index. This covers everything that was mentioned here for the beyond the index. Now, past the index is the credits and the promotion stuff. Obviously, I am desperate for getting stuff done, and so yeah, this is all the information here, and we'll leave it right here while I do my outro now. So, oh yeah, I was going to mention to you guys about where to get this game. This game is off of Tabletop Simulator, as you can see right here. Tabletop Simulator is a great game to represent for board games or any kind of tabletop game. Tabletop, in my opinion, is one of the Tabletop Simulator, actually, my bad, is one of the best platforms out there to represent online board game playing. And I do recommend getting the game regardless if you have interest of playing this game or not, if you're a board game player. It is mostly common used for Battletech and Warhammer 40k, but there's other games that you can obviously play, and you can even create your own games with the tools here provided, like what I just did. If you do wish to get Tabletop Simulator, there will be a link in the description down below, and there will also be a link to the Steam Workshop page to this game entirely, like Abandoned Mechs. And if you guys want to provide stuff like feedback or anything, you guys can personally message me and let me know if you guys A, liked it, and B, the feedback you wish to provide to me. This has been Capt. Raama, and I'm signing off.